All right, good morning, everyone. I'm so happy to be here with you all and be joined by such an esteemed panel. I'm Sarah Seibert, Managing Editor of CIO Media and Research. And with me today, we have Mitch Thornborough, the CIO and OIT Director at IHS, Andre Frazier, Regional Technology Officer for Federal Healthcare at VMware by Broadcom, Sweta Ladwa, Chief of Scientific Solutions Delivery Branch at NHLBI, and Andrew Carney, the Program Manager for Resilient Systems at ARPA-H. So thank you all for joining. The lightning rounds are one of my favorite sessions that we host. So each speaker has chosen a topic for a recent milestone or project in health IT that's driving progress at their respective agencies. After each speaker presents, we'll turn it over to you all for audience questions, so start brainstorming. And to kick things off, I'll welcome Mitchell Thornborough to the podium to outline his progress with modernizing the Path electronic health record and how he's expanding access to healthcare, especially in rural communities.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I have a small cheat sheet, but this is for you guys. I usually talk for about an hour, but we're right before lunch, so I won't do that to you. But do want to talk about our Path EHR, which are patients at the heart. And backing up a little bit, I'm with Indian Health Service and a citizen of the Muskogee Creek Nation. So grew up using our health system. My family used our health system. My kids were born in our health system. My grandkids were born in our health system. My grandmother used our health system, and so on and so forth. You get the idea. And so this work is really connected to our community and my passion for improving healthcare, not only nationally, but at the local level, being able to feel those improvements. But for those of you that don't know, Indian Health Service is an operative under Department of Health and Human Services, and we're responsible for providing health care to 2.7 million, 2.8 million Native Americans across the country. We have facilities in 37 states, so we operate just under 50 hospitals and a little over 600 healthcare facilities, typically smaller ambulatory sites. We also partner closely with our tribal nations, so there's 576 federally recognized tribes across the country that we work closely with, and in some cases the tribes carry out the mission of the federal government and provide that healthcare in their communities with great success. So we're really excited about that mission. But ultimately, we are one of the largest healthcare networks in rural America. In some cases, we're the backbone of the healthcare in rural America, not only for our Native American patients, but for all patients in those communities. Alaska is a great example. If you're not on the road system, you are using, through our partners in Alaska, you are benefiting from the Indian Health Service. If you're in extreme rural areas, even here in the lower 48, likely we may be the closest hospital. If you're on vacation in the Grand Canyon, we operate a clinic at Havasupai. And so lots of interesting stories there. But as we looked at our technology and what we need to operate these healthcare systems, it became apparent not only that we need the tools, but we need this to work for the folks in the field because they're very disconnected, they're very far away. And so we focused on governance first. And so that's an interesting way to talk about technology, is to talk about governance. But, Path EHR is not just an EHR, it's not just a technology program. We need to know how we make those decisions. So we built a very elaborate, comprehensive enterprise collaboration group made up of 200 staff across the country, federal and tribal and urban, which is non-federal, staff that will use the system that through 15 domains help make sure that Path EHR is viable a decade from now. That the decisions that we make not only in the build phase as we're rolling out the pilots, but also as we operate that system for a decade or more. We're also focused on liberating data. The current EHR is, while we write the code and deploy that system, it's 200 separate databases across the country, complete, they're patched separately, the data's separate. And so liberating the data is actually one of our core values. We want to be able to make better decisions, and we want those driven by the information stored in our EHR. We also, we want to move to a living network of health data. And we'll talk a little bit about advances in AI, but I think everybody in the room understands how important data is. I'm always amazed at we can't predict the ways our data that we're developing today will be used in the future. If we had an hour, I'd talk a little more about that. But so liberating data, one of our highest priorities. We also need a sustainable foundation. We need a platform that can grow with us and be sustainable into the future. And that comes from technology, but it's also the way we govern it, the way it can scale up and down with the changes in healthcare. And so sustainability is really important for us. And an important point is as we move from those 200 separate databases to an enterprise solution, we can actually deliver consistent user experiences and patient experiences because we can modernize that support system in a way that doesn't work real well in rural America when you need thousands of IT professionals in really remote rural areas and they're repeating the same work. So sustainability, a big issue there. Also scaling with healthcare. So AI is a great use case. So instead of the government trying to keep pace with development, we're adopting that in the future so that we can move with the private sector, with our patients across the country and adopt those technologies. And finally, in closing, Path EHR is more than just that IT project. It impacts everybody. We're focused on governance, sustainability, and then that scalability into the future for decades to come. So thank you for your time.
Thanks so much, Mitch. You set up Andre pretty well, talking about some of those emerging technologies that you all are moving to throughout the modernization. So Andre, I'd like to welcome you to the podium to talk through how to build an effective cloud strategy.
Hey everyone, I'm Andre Fraser. And before I get into my topic, I'm just going to give you a quick breaker, right? So I know this is a tough crowd. I see a lot of senior decision makers. So here's a dad joke, or maybe more like a joke, right? So after you die, what part of the human body is the last to stop working? The pupils, they dilate. You get it? All right. So I'm a recovering cloud addict. I used to work for Microsoft in Azure. I remember back in, this was around 1998, I was this young hotshot kid out of college, working with Hewlett-Packard, and they sent me to this small startup company in Annapolis, Maryland. And these guys had this bright idea that they were going to go talk to Microsoft, and they're going to talk to Sun, and they're going to sell software as a service. And back then, 98, you had to buy an ELA, you had to buy software. You just couldn't get a subscription. So I remember having some Microsoft said to go yourself when we went to talk to them about selling the software and Windows server as a service. So that's how I got into cloud. Like US Internet Working, which became AT&T's cloud, we were pushing the envelope of how you actually have a strategy going into cloud. So recently, my wife and I, we've been watching The Office. And I don't know if any of you guys watch The Office. Right, you've got like Michael Scott, the boss man, in there, and he's kind of walking around and talking. So when I go around and I talk to my customers about what is your cloud strategy? What are you doing in the cloud? The usual response is, yeah, we're going to AWS, or we're in AWS, we're in Azure, or we have 2 data centers, one in Ashburn and one in Baltimore. And I would say that, contrary to popular belief, cloud is not a destination, but is more of an operating model. So at VMware by Broadcom, formerly VMware, we have what's called a cloud operating model. And I'm just going to read to you what it says. It's kind of a little wordy, but bear with me for a second, right? It's 2 paragraphs. I'm going to read the first paragraph. It's, the VMware cloud operating model provides CIOs with a unified framework for managing applications, infrastructure. That's a mouthful. Across private, public, and hybrid cloud environments, rather than focusing on individual platforms. It emphasizes standardization of operations, governance, automation, financial management. But I would say that, for me, my interpretation of this is your cloud strategy should really think about how you govern your infrastructure, how do you provide those services to your end users, because at the end of the day, infrastructure is here to support your end users, right? Your application owners, your mission owners. And how you do things like, how do you monitor? Like if you have a presence in AWS and you have a presence on premises, are you running 2 separate sets of software to monitor and enforce governance in that? How are you doing things like financial accountability? A lot of my customers have gone to the cloud, and then they have the first really big bill because there's no governance on that. So part of your strategy to consider is how do you do financial tracking and those kind of things. If you're running on premises and you're just running in separate silos, you have your cloud on premises. If you have a separate security team, you have a separate storage team, a separate networking team, I would surmise that you're paying an extra 40% overhead just to run those things separately versus having a unified cloud strategy. So I would say when you get back to your office, if you're consulting with your customers or if you're the CIO, when you grab a cup of coffee or a beer, bring up your browser, search for a cloud operating model by VMware, and kind of take a look. We have a really good book on how to really set up that strategy as you go forward. One of the other things too that we've done recently as part of our cloud initiative is introducing our advanced services for AI. And now, and most of our customers who are running our VMware cloud platform, we recently announced that, hey, you can run your AI workloads now right next to your virtualized workloads. So as you're thinking about, you have petabytes of data, you really can't move it to the public cloud, right? Because you have a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for, Mitch? Regulations that govern how you move your data. So now you can run your private AI next to your data. Anyway, in closing, go look up private AI and cloud operating models. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Andre. Talking about petabytes of data. Next up, we have Sweta Ladwa, who will talk about how she's optimizing data to prepare for AI.
All right, they told me to do a TED-like talk, so bear with me. So imagine you're a scientist staring at mountains of health data. Each study speaks a different language, different formats, terms, even different ways of asking the same question. You know the answers to life-saving discoveries are buried inside, but right now, they're locked away in silos. That's where our story begins, with the challenge of making biomedical data truly interoperable so that every data set can talk to every other data set. For years, researchers have struggled with fragmented health data. One study asks, are you taking medication for high blood pressure? Another lists specific drugs, verapamil, diltiazem, amlodipine. A third just marks yes or no for calcium channel blockers. On their own, none of these answers line up. Without harmonization, we can't easily compare or combine them, and scientists lose precious time cleaning data instead of making discoveries. So we started small, a pilot. We chose about 150 heart, lung, blood, and sleep-relevant variables across 9 longitudinal cohort studies funded by the National Heart, Lung, Blood, and Sleep Institute at the NIH, available in the NHLBI Biodata Catalyst ecosystem, like the well-known Framingham Heart Study or the multi-ethnic study on atherosclerosis, or MESA. That covers over 200,000 participants with multiple data modalities, like clinical, multi-omics, including genomics and proteomics, as well as multimodal imaging, such as ECGs, echoes, MRIs, and lung CTs. We built the Biodata Catalyst harmonized model, a blueprint for making data interoperable. We created a tool chain powered by LinkML, a standards ontology-based converter box, to transform messy inputs into clean, comparable outputs. And we tested it. For example, unifying all those blood pressure medication responses into one harmonized variable. The result? For the first time, researchers can ask multiple studies which participants are taking calcium channel blockers and get one definitive answer. But a pilot is just the beginning. Phase 2 is about scaling and over the next year, making harmonized data available as it's ingested, not years later. Building automation and agentic AI into the pipeline so harmonization happens faster with less manual work, but always with a human in the loop. Supporting both pre-ingest, that's before the data enters the system, working hand in hand with researchers, as well as on-demand harmonization when researchers need it in real time. Think of it as moving from a handcrafted operation to a safe and secure AI-driven scaling system capable of adapting to new studies, new variables, and new research needs. Now imagine the future. A researcher uploads new study data because they have to, because NIH policy says they have to. And instantly, it's harmonized and available for cross-study analysis. Communities of scientists can extend the model themselves, customizing it for their own research needs. And longitudinal data tracking people across decades becomes searchable and comparable at the click of a button. This isn't just convenience. It accelerates science. It means faster answers about heart disease, COVID recovery, chronic illness, obesity, sleep disorders, and more. It means moving from data to discovery at the speed of curiosity. Harmonization may sound technical, but its impact is profoundly human. Every hour we save in data wrangling is an hour gained for science and for patients waiting on the answers. The pilot showed us it could be done. Phase 2 is proving it can scale. And phase 3, that's where harmonization becomes the invisible backbone of biomedical discovery. Because in the end, it's not just about data talking to data. It's about giving us the ability to listen and act on what it's telling us. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Sweta. And then finally, we have Andrew Carney. I'd like to welcome you to the podium to talk about securing health data.
Good morning, everyone. I realize that we are the primary obstacle between you and lunch, so we'll keep it fun and/or brief. My name is Andrew Carney. I'm a program manager at ARPA-H. I'm also a program manager at DARPA. I've spent most of my career outside of healthcare, hacking into systems of interest to the US government. There isn't pretty much anything with a chip in it I've found my way into. And through that process, most of what hacking really is, and I'll let you in on a secret, is just understanding a system really, really, really well. Validating the assumptions of every developer and designer and customer and user of that system, and really just understanding it in a very deep, detail-oriented way. And so at ARPA-H, my approach to changing the way that we secure medical devices, specifically legacy devices in hospitals, in healthcare environments, and software, has been informed by nearly 20 years of breaking systems in this very sort of detail-oriented, focused way. And so we've developed a variety of programs and techniques that are, many of which are currently available to those that are interested, to do two big things. One is leverage LLMs in a trustworthy, consistent way for analyzing software and hardware. We use program analysis, formal methods, traditional kind of deterministic techniques to validate and sort of corral the probabilistic AI assertions and hypotheses. And this allows us to do, just recently at DEF CON, a hacker conference in Vegas, we demonstrated the ability to find and patch vulnerabilities in source code using this approach for a few $100s per zero-day vulnerability that was discovered. Over 54 million lines of code. This was incredible. Like, folks were very skeptical that we could do this, especially sort of at that price point and at that level of complexity. So all those tools are open source already. They're available. If you would like hear more about that, happy to talk, happy to help your organization leverage and engage with the folks that are continuing that work. And the other piece of this is simulation or emulation. It's sort of, I think about it. Digital twins, I know that's an overloaded term in this space. But what struck me when I first started looking at sort of clinical kind of IT environments was how unique they were and how uninterruptible they needed to be. Availability was king, integrity was also extremely important, and obviously the patient comes above all else. So the way that we test systems at scale in other sectors, typically we don't test on live nuclear power plants, we don't test in water filtration systems that are feeding our communities. We create hardware in the loop or fully kind of software digital twins of these systems, and that's where we test. That's where we kick the tires, that's where we evaluate them. But for all these unique healthcare kind of IT environments, there isn't really a solution that does that. It doesn't get down into the weeds of the sort of software and firmware of the devices in your environment. It also doesn't necessarily address the workflows of your IT staff or the clinical needs of your establishment. So at ARPA-H, we thought, okay, let's do that. We think we can do it, and we are. We're just on the cusp of starting this effort called Upgrade, which is a vendor-agnostic, facility-agnostic approach to characterizing and then lifting into a high-fidelity simulation that goes down into the hardware and software. So you can actually test new products, maybe agentic AI-based ones that you're worried about, or new data flow, new workflow for IT staff, or data analysis, or billing. You can test all that software in a high-fidelity environment that matches your needs and your specific sort of deployments. And so I'm really excited for that work. We have a number of partners in industry that I can't name just yet, but we'll be excited for that announcement in the next few weeks. And we're super excited to engage further with the community and sort of make those tools, once again, available for all once they're ready. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Andrew. All right, it's the moment you've all been waiting for. So there are microphones on either side of the room. If anyone has questions for our speakers, feel free to walk over. And in the meantime, Mitch, what are some of the benefits of moving off of government-owned software? You talked about that enterprise approach that you all are taking, and how are you working with industry to boost innovation?
Thanks. Great question to open it up. Government software has its place, and certainly our existing EHR has served us well for 40 years, and we have a dedicated team of professionals that are keeping that running, and contractors and partners to make sure that that's stable. But when we look at the long-term benefit of engaging the industry, so rather than us trying to implement every new technology as it comes on board and us having to write code in this legacy system that's 40 years old, and quite frankly, our developers call it fragile. They spend more time fixing things that break as they implement new features than they do anything else. Mm-hmm. And so that's the technology debt that you're kind of dealing with with these really aged legacy systems. And then I also mentioned the ability to scale and go enterprise gets unlocked so that we can support that better and create those consistent experiences. But ultimately, what we really want is a system that matches what's available to the American public. So that we're not lagging behind and using tools that are decades old. Our providers are using tools that are decades old, and quite frankly, our patients and providers are frustrated because they want what's available in the industry. They want what's available down the street. They want to know or use systems similar to what they trained on, and the best way to do that is to engage that system. And as you look at, if you break this into a piece of pie and you look at the development costs and the R&D specifically, the healthcare EHR industry spends more on R&D than our entire agency. And so that's a powerful way for us to leverage that for the American people and for our patients specifically, is we're tapping into that. So for our smaller investment, we are tapping into the industry for that larger piece of the pie, and we're bringing those benefits in faster, cheaper, and timely than we could through government-owned software. So I think that's the crux of the issue, is you really have to understand, are we so unique that we have to develop our own software, or do we match what the private sector does? And for us, the way we see patients, the way we collect blood pressure, the way we diagnose, prescribe, treat, we fall under all the same industry regulations from our other sister government agencies, whether it's CMS or others. So we might as well participate in the benefits of that model. So that was really the thought behind aligning with the industry.
Right, that makes sense. And Andre, right, just double checking, all right. So you mentioned, you were talking about how agencies and organizations can build an effective cloud strategy. What is the most common challenge you see, and is there a way to proactively pivot to avoid those pitfalls?
You should come talk to me. No, but the biggest obstacle I see is really financial governance and data governance. That's where I see I'm not thinking through what, some of my customers are really good about it. The ones who are just kind of following trends, they've been in a lot of trouble because they're not thinking through the full cost of it, right? You know, where you move your data, you know, some vendors will have you egress charges once you put your data in. It's like a Hotel California, right? You can check in, but you can never check out. So that's to me, and then also financial governance of it. You really have to put controls in place, how you're going to utilize, how you people have access to the infrastructure, how you cap them, how you do show back. Being able to have the dashboards to be able to do that is very important.
Right. All right, our first question. Hi, if you could say your name and where you're from.
I'm Barbara Keating from Maximus. And actually I have a question for Andrew. In a former life, I was on a board for a company that did simulation software for nuclear plants. So I understand fully what you're talking about. And so I was wondering, when do you think you're going to be able to have this? And is this going to be a commercial product? And how do you see the rollout of this? And then all of the issues that are engaged with that.
So an easy question then. We're kicking off in a few weeks, and we hope to have our first full prototype publicly demoed within a year. The tools themselves are being developed with as sort of permissive a licensing scheme as possible. There is dependency on some external commercial software, like won't name any specific products, but there's existing virtualization and emulation software that we'll be leveraging. And it will not be perfect at first, like we expect, there'll be incremental refinement. But I think we do have the tools to do this. And the sort of the exciting part for me is that the technology that we open sourced at DEF CON that was finding these 0 days and then patching them kind of in the same closed feedback loop is something that, like, when we think about the patch cycle in healthcare, the idea that we could have patches in an extremely responsive way from our vendors and then trust to be able to deploy them or even hot patch systems. Like the idea that we can hot patch the Linux kernel, a running server can be hot patched in a significant manner without any downtime potentially. The idea that we can take more kind of systems with 100% uptime requirements with intense kind of safety and regulatory oversight and give them that same treatment. Like the idea of EHR downtime is bananas. I realize that I'm grossly oversimplifying, but like it, and I know some folks have like EHR solutions and deployments where downtime is not really a big issue. But it's kind of surprising to me that is not the norm, that sort of like this critical resource should be available all the time. We should be able to, we definitely have the ability to develop better software that can provide that capability. Whether we have the sort of will and the incentives are in place, I think is the other question. But yeah, well, hopefully within a year we'll have a demo, and I'd love to chat afterwards if you. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. All right, Sweta. So you mentioned the multimodal aspect of the data you've been working with. Can you describe that a bit more? What are those challenges and what makes it unique?
Sure. So in research data, there's obviously consent is involved in research participants participating in a study. And so when we do a study, a lot of our longitudinal cohort studies do have multimodal data. That includes everything from clinical data, genomics, proteomics, metabolomics, imaging, like chest CTs, lung CTs, MRIs, echoes. And so some of the challenges that we have are because our research participants are located in different pockets of the country. It's well known that if you're linking different data types for the same individual, you can potentially re-identify them. And when you exacerbate that by geographically locating these individuals in different pockets of the country, you're just being able to potentially further re-identify them. And so we're really working to ensure that the privacy of the individuals who've donated their data to research and continue to participate in our longitudinal studies feel that they can do so safely and securely without potentially exposing this data through the AI types of use cases that we want innovation to happen. We want to be able to use this data to fuel clinical decision support tools in the point of care and things like that. But we have to be able to put guardrails in place to make sure that given the multimodal data that we have, that we're not compromising the privacy and security of the individual's data.
Right, that makes sense. All right, I think this may be our final question, so if you could introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, I'm Emily Krebs, Palladium Partners. Sweta, this is for you. Big fans of Biodata Catalyst on our end, as well as all of us. So wondering a little bit about the interoperability of those two big platforms, and as well, if you're seeing sort of any feedback loop that comes down from the harmonization that actually changes how research protocols might be conducted so that you're getting better harmonized data from some of these insights that you're struggling through now with the dirty data, if you will.
Sure, that's a great question. Actually, I was talking to John Giannini, who was on the previous panel, about working to interoperate with all of us, because there's a wealth of data that they have, there's a wealth of data that we have, and we absolutely, that's in the roadmap, and we're going to be talking to them to facilitate that further. In terms of your second question around, sorry, what was it? Can you just... How does harmonization potentially affect how the data are collected? Yes, actually, so NHLBI has put out this AI initiative, and there's a part of that initiative that's the Precision Medicine Coordinating Center, and it's exactly designed to do that, to make sure that we're working with researchers from the get-go to ensure that the data is aligning with standards, that it's aligning with standards that our current Biodata Catalyst infrastructure is designed to support, and then we have a feedback loop actually with our researchers to make sure that the standards that we have reflected are in fact the standards that are best in class and suited for the data types that they're collecting, and so that basically any studies moving forward will by default be aligning with those standards as they collect their data, and then we won't have this problem of having to retrospectively harmonize a whole bunch of data, but prospectively we'll have everything aligned to the model that we're developing currently. Thank you.
Great, thank you for your question, and thank you to all of our speakers for giving us their take on health IT innovation. It's great to see what you all are doing, and I look forward to seeing how it advances in the future. So let's give another round of applause to the speakers, and I'll pass it back over to Mike.